need you. And the blackened eyes make my way into your mind.
There are no men like me.
Just to know what
Only
you
me.
knew. Restless every time we start locking eyes.
There are no men like me. Only
Lost
me.
control. Oh, it's paradise with honesty, but I'm in the dead of the night. Let the darkness take control. Let the darkness take control. Darkness take control. May the darkness take control. Take me in the smoke, breathe me in and let me go. Sink to your heart to find you. Open up your eyes till you're blinded by the lies, so you can see what you do. Restless every time we start locking eyes. Lost control. Oh, it's paradise with honesty, but I'm in the dead of the night. Teardrops on the floor. The pain is over. Feel the darkness take control. Darkness take control.
Welcome to AfterTalk, where wrestling goes beyond the mat. Here's your host, the Glamazon Delisha.
Hey everyone, thank you guys for joining into AfterTalk, where we take a more deeper dive into talking about what we all love, which is why we're here, which is the wrestling. And I am joined by my co-host, Nicole. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Just, another day in paradise. This COVID-19's got me going stir crazy.
And we're also joined by our producer extraordinaire, who we also known as the voice of the voiceless, Cal. How are you doing?
Hello. I just can't see Nicole at the moment. She's like loading. I don't know if you guys can see her, but I can't see her. So if you want to
Yes, it's loading on me too.
okay.
Yes, it's stuff because we both have YouTube open. Nobody gets to see my beautiful face.
All right, going full screen.
Such a shame my hair is on point today.
It was. I got to see it. It was.
Just from the tech standpoint, guys, if you guys don't know, for the people who are watching, welcome Randall as well. There is a pandemic going on. In case you guys are like watching this later on and don't know about this, or if you're born after this podcast happens, there was a pandemic at this time, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of social distancing. So a lot of their talking is going through Discord and other types of video chat, means. So we don't get all the bandwidth we have been getting. So if you see some technical hiccups, just please bear with us.
Just roll with it. Like we're doing with COVID-19. Just roll with it.
Yeah, so today, guys, we thought and just a little chatter, we were supposed to have this, I think, a few weeks ago, but of course, the pandemic that's going on made that a little bit difficult, and then the weather decided it didn't want to cooperate, so that made it difficult. So we appreciate you guys being patient with us and being able to put on the show tonight when you weren't that to happen until last Monday when we told you. But we thought we'd just take a brief moment of topic, talking about the people of color of the WWE and how they've been handled in the past, and how they've been handling presently day right now within the last few years for present day, and how we would hope to see them being featured in the future going forward. And in case you may not be aware what a person of color is, it is basically, a lot of people just think it's relegated to maybe black people, but it's not. Or they may think it's just those with brown skin. It is not. It's usually a lot of people will designate it as being non-Caucasian or non-white as person of color, and a lot of it is geared towards those in the minority um section. So, but the majority of people again think of it as like Black, Latino, Indian, Asian, Middle Eastern, African. I think I might be missing a few more of like the big groups, and of course, there's going to be like subgroups underneath that as well for all the different subnames of these cultures and regions of the world. But we have and have had a good number of them in the sport of wrestling that we love, and sometimes they're not always given the limelight, or they get relegated to smaller roles or stereotypical roles, or they don't get to be the face of the company, as we know today. The ones who are on the posters, who you click on when the website comes up, or are on the opening segment of Raw or SmackDown. So we thought we would just shine a light, maybe give a little history lesson on some of those in the past, some of those we may have forgotten about, like I had as we were researching the topic, and some of our favorites that we are glad to see shine today. So if you guys want to like pop in some of your favorites in the comment section, feel free to go ahead. And that way, if we miss someone, we can maybe bring it up and talk about it while we are discussing the ones that we kind of uh, liked or took a liking to as we came into the sport. I will say, because, well, one, I am not a wrestling historian, so my knowledge base is not that great. I can't go, oh, right, I remember WrestleMania 3 back in 19, whenever that was.
But that's why we have Cal.
And remember, certain historical moments that may have happened. I came in, as we've seen when we first doing this episode, I came in around the beginning of the Attitude Era. I mean, I was born in '91, so I didn't get to grow up with it a lot. So a lot of
Oh
the
my
Attitude
God,
Era.
What do you mean you were born in 91? That's
Really
okay. My wife was born in 94. That makes me feel even more.
I was like, yeah, and a lot of my wrestling knowledge does come strictly from WWF at the time. I used to be scared of WCW because they had Chucky on the screen one day, and I was like, nope, not for me. And I didn't realize it was just going to be that one day, obviously. And so I didn't really watch a lot of that programming until I've gone back and watched a couple of like matches as I grew up in the past, as they became available on the interwebs. So a lot of our focus, actually all of our focus, is going to be on the WWF and WWE, because that's a lot what this podcast is based off of. It's a lot of our common fandom of WWE. But
So are you guys. I'm starting to watch pretty much anything that's not WWE. So eventually, this might be called AfterTalk, but I'm going to talk less and less about the WWE and more about all of these other brands, because I have a secret to tell you. I haven't watched WWE since like last July.
even though I keep giving her homework assignments and she's not listening, so she's not
I know.
really being her teacher self and listening to her other professor over here.
One thing I was going to say that what you pointed out is it's good for like our age difference and when we came into wrestling, like fandom, because we could tell of how things go. Because you might not talk about WCW, but when we get to our first subject, one of my favorite people of color tag teams is from the WCW. So it's going to actually vary. So that's going to be kind of cool to see some maybe history sprinkled in, because back when George Washington and I wrestled over the cherry tree, it was intense.
I think I'm sandwiched in between you guys. As far as age.
I would have recorded it on the Telegram if it was there, and then and we would have the first World Star.
Well, my birthday's on Monday, so I'm gonna be the ripe old age of 32.
You are fine. Alright, so let's actually get into a brief history lesson on some people of color highlights. One I wanted to highlight was Mr. Pedro Morales, who was if I did my research properly, was the actual first person of color champion. At the time, I think it was WWF, and he was a wrestler of Puerto Rican descent. I think he actually grew up there, and he wrestled in what was the World Wrestling Association as well, and where he was also a world heavyweight title holder there, and then moved on to various regional territories as they were back then. They weren't these big companies that we know today. They were all territories based on the region of of the different sections of the U.S. And also in Japan and down in Mexico and other nations, right? But of course, until it actually we didn't really get the wrestling as we know it until Vince McMahon came into the picture and was like, you know what, I'm just gonna grab with these territories, make one big corporation, and we'll go from there. And that's the wrestling that we know about today. But he became the WWF champion and was the first person of Puerto Rican descent to do so. And he would also later on to be the first or only title holder of all the like big champions of tag team, singles, and intercontinental champion, and of a combined title reign of 1,027 days, which is fifth all time. And as the case of Bruno Sammartino for like the of a Italian descent, he was very big in the Puerto Rican and Latino community. He was like a big hero of theirs, much as the heroes that we will see talk about later on for their specific communities going forward. And he was the first Latino to be in his of a Latino Hispanic heritage should be inducted into the Hall of Fame back in I believe '95. And unfortunately, I believe we lost him last year. If I'm, I hope that wasn't wrong. He's still living, and I just killed someone. Oh, okay, no, he died. He passed away last year in 2019 at the age of 76. So we lost their hero that day. But as you can presume, for a community who's been underserved, which is weird during that time and also during this time, how he would be a role model and hero to a lot of people who look like him, who they didn't really quite get to see those people on TV. And you'll see that as a recurring notion throughout the rest of this podcast of people seeing someone who looks like them represented on an otherwise underserved market. Did you guys know about Pedro Morales before? Because I knew of him, but I never really like looked into his work or to even know that he would be technically the first person of color champion in the WWE at that what would be WWE at that time.
I didn't know until we started doing this podcast and you sent me a list of everyone and I was like, who?
Yeah, so yeah. For me, I knew Pedro Morales. Not personally, but I knew Pedro Morales. And I followed his wrestling. A lot of good, I think, battles with Bruno Sammartino back in the day. Another person of color of note back then also was Carlos Colon. I think he also held a championship back then as well. But yeah, I remember those two for Hispanics were really big when I was younger. Learning about the history of wrestling when I was younger, not when I was around younger.
Let's see. Side note: you might see the name Colon come up a little bit later.
But are you getting to the tag team ones yet, or no? Are you still going with this?
Yeah. And then as I was looking down the list, Wikipedia, we're not sponsored by them, but they were a lot of help in trying to write down a list of a lot of firsts that we saw, and I didn't know this. Again, didn't know it because again I wasn't watching during this time. That back in '72, where Mr. Fiji and Professor Tanaka would have been the first person of color tag team champions, and then because I think everyone knows of Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas back in '83 being the first African American tag team champions. They're kind of like the bookmark that everyone kind of like goes through a lot. But back in '72, Mr. Fiji and Professor Tanaka were the first people of color. I think Mr. Fiji being from Japan, and Tanaka I don't remember because my notes got deleted. And then if we go back into the women's, I actually, if you asked me who the first person of color champion was, my mind probably just would have went automatically Jacqueline because that's what I was watching. But back in '68, we had Yokiko Tomo. Did I pronounce that right? Yeah, Tomo, who won it back in '68. Back again, I think that was during still some of the, I think WWF times before they got more national recognition. So that might be why, because it a lot of times the more national recognition didn't come until maybe the '80s and '90s when it really started to gain the national, worldwide actual fanfare. But I wanted to highlight some of those because I feel like offhand, for especially those of my viewers and Nicole's generation, we might not get to know these people or these names unless we're sitting in a wrestling history class or somehow, or there's some sort of stuff on it on TV or network or YouTube or something like that. So I really wanted to know that, put that out there, that these people really were kind of landmarks in the business, even though they don't get a lot of the name recognition maybe today.
Yeah,
So-
you know what? It was funny because when we started doing this, one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to go through and count all of the title changes for just the WWE title. So from WWF to WWE, but the championship title. And I tried to go through on Wikipedia and like count, and my stats got a bit messed up, and I couldn't fill in all the information I wanted, and I didn't want to be super inaccurate, so I just like nixed that whole section. That whole section, not session. It's not like I was doing a jam session on Wikipedia. But the point that I was trying to make when I was collecting all of those stats was that like we've had over, 40 different heavyweight champions since 1983. And like so few of those champions have been people of color. I don't have an exact number because, yeah, again, I just started going through and I was like, well, I like remember The Rock and yeah. And
Would you say it's under
Henry.
20%?
What?
Would you say it's under 20%?
I would definitely say, well, when I came up with it, I could really only find 3, and technically it was just, I could only find 3. So whatever, because yeah, I mean, no, it was over like 40, we have 40 different heavyweight champs, and that's just the one title belt. It wasn't all the other ones. And I only found 3 people of color champions, but again, there's some disputes about whether or not what constitutes as people of color, and then Wikipedia is like, oh, it's this or it's that. That's why Delisha like opened it with, by the way, this is what we mean when we're talking about people of color, which, is the only white person on here. I was like, that would be great. We should definitely start with that.
Those in the background, so there's that.
Well, and it was funny because Cal was like, just because God didn't tan you doesn't mean you don't get to partake in this, because I really wanted to talk about this subject. And then I was like worried that as the only white person, I was going to have the loudest voice. And I'm like, okay, I need to like take a step back. So if I don't talk as often as I usually do, it's just because, I mean, I'm still a minority, but I'm still white at the end of the day. So I don't necessarily get it, obviously. But I mean, not to be like, but my wife is a person of color, so like she talks to me about her struggles. I don't understand because I'm white, but yeah. Anyways, there were so few people of color champions. I was like really shocked, and I guess that's why, because last year, like the last really big thing that I watched, other than WrestleMania, was SummerSlam, I think. But like in WrestleMania last year, right, in 2019, I was shocked that, because I hadn't been following the way I should, because I was getting, to where WWE was starting to irritate me. And when everyone, like, all I kept seeing on my newsfeed on Twitter and everything else was about Kofi's comment to Vince right before, like, WWE about, I've never complained about the fact that you've never had or never allowed someone to compete or contend for the WWE title that looked like me. Like, something along those lines, right? Like, that's essentially what he was saying. And it's not entirely true because we've had people of color, but I think he was, specifically getting to the fact that he was black. And at that point, there was only one black man who was The Rock, who held the WWE Championship in the 53 years of its lineage. And although we did have Mark Henry and we had Booker T, they were both black men and they held the World Heavyweight Championship before it was retired in 2013. So nobody gets all like, but wait a second. So, okay, I did get that much research down. But Kofi winning the WWE title last year, it really set, in my opinion, it shed some very much needed light on the blatant race problem that's not only plagued, but also still plaguing the WWE, but also most media. And I could be wrong, but like just an example to derail a little bit from wrestling, how many white people did all of you know that hated Black Panther? Because like I knew a bunch of white people that hated Black Panther. And I was like, "Oh, you didn't like that movie? But why?" And then they were like, and I'm like, well, you're a little racist and you didn't realize it? Is that why? Like, I mean, that's what it boils down to. And my dad was one of those people. Like, I was like, give me an example. Give me a reason why you didn't like Black Panther. He literally couldn't give me a reason. And I'm like, that's because you're a little bit racist and you don't want to admit it. And he was like, no. Man, white people get pissed when you call them racist. It's like, whew. Anyways, that's just one example of the media, and it's not just WWE, but obviously this is a show about wrestling. So I just wanted to digress a little bit and be like, that's the truth is that this isn't just a WWE problem. This is a Hollywood and all media content problem.
Yeah, as you were.
Okay, I'll shut up now.
No, you're fine. No, as you were talking about the numbers of like champions, I was looking at our shared doc of the two singles titles that are the prestigious one, and I counted as far as the world heavyweight title goes, there was only 6 of them. When the belt got unified back in 2013, when they decided to go with the brand split and everything. And as far as the WWF/WWE title, there's been only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people of color to have held that title.
And keep in mind, you guys, that might sound like a high number, but literally just the WWE Championship has literally changed hands like more than 40 times, okay? I stopped counting at 40 because I was like, holy hell. And you're talking there's 9 people of color who have held that championship over 40. Okay, over 40, 9. Okay, I don't math, I teach history, but I know that that's a small percentage.
And also, I was counting their first title defense because, as we know, belts change hand. Like they could lose it quickly and stuff. So I
also wasn't counting every single time it switched hands. Otherwise, it was something like more than 55 or something like that. It was just like I think the number of times like officially that it changed hands was 25, but then like unofficially with all of the other garbage that we have in wrestling, it was over 40, and I just stopped counting. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah, and the only time you really saw them flourish in quotation marks was usually on what we call the mid-tier and lower tier titles, like the U.S. title and IC title and like the tag team title. There's a lot of them in the tag team division who have held, well, I would say a lot more.
Right.
But there's only maybe a handful that were, I guess, 2 people of color, or 3 if you're the New Day, 2 people of color who consistently held it. But yeah, it was actually staggering because you don't really think about it until you actually look at who's holding the title, and then you go, oh, well, okay. But because there are times when you see like really big gaps, like in the tag team title, there's the first for Mr. Fuji and Professor Tanaka, the next people of color to win it would be the Wild Samoans back in 1980, and that's a 12-year difference between people of color holding the title. And as you get closer and closer to, I guess, last year, you do see the gap starts to get smaller. And as me and Nicole were talking about this earlier when we were talking to each other, that you really do see that she touched on it earlier about the bigger scope of Hollywood or the entertainers in general, you do also see that reflected in WWE. A lot of times they do take what's going on in pop culture to reference in WWE to stay relevant, honestly, because we all like to be topical and to keep things relevant, to keep people engaged in your product. So when the dominance is, white people on television, of course, it kind of makes sense that that's what you will see on WWE because they are an entertainment company. They're not just a sporting company, even though it's what they tried to market at first. But they're an entertainment company. They are there to entertain you. And if the masses are saying we want white male or white female people on our screen, then that's what they're going to product because that's what the masses are saying that they want to see. And as we'll talk about later, as you see in the last couple of years, people have been like, no, we want more diversity, and they're like, okay, here you go.
Right. But
So
that took a lot, right? And
yeah,
here's the thing, guys. WWE is in it to make money. Duh. We live in capitalist USA, okay? So what sells is what the WWE is typically going to lean into. That's why The Rock was so popular because his shit sold. You know what I mean? Like I really think that that's why they didn't give Becky Lynch like the run that she deserved way before she became Two Belts Becky and all that because at the end of the day, she didn't need to win in order to sell merch. People just bought her merch, so it didn't make any difference. And it was the same thing with Bailey. When you start to see those people's merge go like this because people get tired of not seeing their champion, like not seeing somebody who they like being champion, their merch starts to go like this. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hold on a second, we have to do something. And then that's when we start to see stuff. And it comes down probably to numbers. But I mean, it's such a problem. Like, Delisha and I's first episode was over the first women's pay-per-view. And I mean, like, you guys, I like cried, okay? And I mean, like, the reason why is because there wasn't anything like that for women when I was little, and it's so important for people of color to see themselves on wrestling, on the things that they like. And I mean, obviously I can't speak as a person of color, but I can speak as a queer woman, like I never heard the term bi on TV until like 2010. I didn't even know that was like a word. I was like, I mean, I did know it was a word because that's how I identified. But like, I had never heard anyone in media, in anything that I consumed, say the word bi. And I don't want to get too much into media and everything, but I think white people in particular have this issue where if they don't see themselves, then they can't like get into the storylines. And that's why the WWE strays away from people of color storylines, is because white people, a lot of straight white men and even straight white women have never had to like insert themselves into someone that they don't necessarily identify with. Whereas like if you were a part of a minority, like me being queer, then like there weren't queer characters on television ever. Like there just weren't, So like if I liked somebody, I just had to like them. I mean, it's the same thing with comics or cartoons or whatever it was I was consuming, because at the end of the day, there weren't queer people on television, and it's the same with people of color. Like if you're not there, then learn to like adapt, be like, oh, I like this character because of X, Y, and Z. But what it comes down to is not the color of their skin or, their sexuality or the religion or anything like that. Because if you're not a white Christian dude, then you're probably not represented. And it's like, but that's okay. I like Captain America, right? Straight white dude right there. But at the end of the day, what do I like about Captain America? This, and it has nothing to do with the way that he looks, because I just had to like things that didn't look like me or, didn't represent me. And I think it's important for the WWE how we've seen them do better with their women's, division and do better with their people of color. Like I cried a little inside when Asuka was the first Royal Rumble champion, because like that's such a win. Like she's a woman of color. Like not only do we have the Royal Rumble, but then we have a woman of color winning the Royal Rumble. It was like a really big deal for me. And I mean, like, that's just one example of the good examples. I'm sorry, I'm just segueing us into the next thing. So like, that's one of the really good examples of the WWE taking their talent and saying, hey, listen, we have this monumental moment. It's the first women's Royal Rumble. Who should we have win it? They could have had Charlotte win it and everybody would have been like, oh, God, Charlotte wins something again. Don't get me wrong, right? Charlotte's a great wrestler. But I mean, the fact that they took a woman of color and put her as the first Royal Rumble champion was a really big deal. I mean, or at least to me it was, because I was like, think of all the little girls in Asia who, I'm sorry, that's racist. Think of all the little girls in China or Japan or, you know, Southeast Asia that are watching. To clump them together is wrong. Okay, don't do that. They're watching this stuff and they're like, oh my God, that's me up there. And I know that that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it so is, because it's like little you gets to see your dream and you could be like, I could be that one day. I don't know. I'll shut up again. I talk too much.
Yeah, you're good. But I did want to segue into some examples of when WWE had gotten it right in the past and currently. And then
wait.
also. Sorry?
Can I talk about history now?
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry.
About where we were. Okay, so like we're talking about when back in the day wrestling. So as you guys see from the picture, we have Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson, the first, pretty much when they talk about the first like African American team to win the championships. We had them represented, like Felicia said earlier, about being the bookmarks. And as you guys know, Rocky Johnson is the father of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who's one of the most popular wrestlers in the history of the business. Tony Atlas was a world-renowned bodybuilder, and he was very famous. So like it was a pretty good like duo to put together as a tag team. Unfortunately, it kind of went downhill after that, really, because Tony Atlas, he didn't really get much recognition after that. Unfortunately, he also got kind of like stereocast or typecast because they made him into a character called Saba Simba, which is kind of like a Shaka Zulu derivative. And he's like a world-renowned bodybuilder and the first ever African-American tag team champion. That's what he became. It's kind of like insulting if you think about it. So just think about, you're talking about how people were treated. You can't forget back then too, because it was very. Now, I want you to think about this though, because we can't just attack it from one side. Think about how wrestling was then. Everything was very much typecast. The Indian wrestler was like Tiger Ali Singh. You know, they had like the Russians were like Cold War Russians. You know, it's kind of like how if you watch the show Glow, it's very much like that. So back then, you can't really. Can you fault them? That's how things were back then, right? If you think about it, things were very typecast and put into roles like that. So that's why I'm saying, like, he was put in Saba Simba. You had like the Samoan people being like crazy head shrinker guys like that. The Japanese wrestlers obviously had like their beautiful style with the masks sometimes, or their elegant costumes, very high flying moves, stuff like that. So it was very, I guess, segmented back then. If you look at the picture, also Ethel Johnson.
But has that really changed? Like, all the stuff you just said is still stuff we face today. I mean, Asuka had a mask.
Kabuki Warriors.
Look at Kairi Sane. Look at Ember Moon. Oh, let's make her a werewolf. It's like, can we please stop making people of color into animals? That would be great.
But but also I think some of them do get their own say on what they want their character to be, kind of, where they're like, I want to, like, here's what my interest is. So maybe we could work that into what I am. Kind of thing. I feel like that's how some of them are now.
I feel like we still suffer from that.
But I don't think it's like they're all, the majority is like that. Like, I feel like, all the, like, fair. Back then, all of them were like in a certain category kind of thing. Like, that's how it just was. And like, the Middle Eastern people were like the Iron Sheik and Colonel Mustafa. Like, it was like that, and for the woman out there, she was the first African American woman ever to wrestle, Ethel Johnson. It's interesting that they this is actually the news clipping from her one of her first matches, and they put like girl wrestler. So I guess it's big to have a girl wrestler back then, but I guess they didn't point out that she was African American. Maybe it was I don't know what it was. But when you guys are talking about representation and all that, and you're saying how there's only like one champion of color, from now until in those 12 years, right? You said from 1970 to 1982 or whatever it was. Delisha, you said the exact number of years. I have to ask you though, how many people of color were actually wrestling then? You know what I'm saying? Like, so you can't just say, like, there's only one champion back then. I mean, you can say that, right? You can say that. It's a fact. But how many different people could have been champion back then?
Sure, but we're also talking about post-1983. I mean, there were plenty of people wrestling in the 90s, people of color wrestling in the 90s that I remember. Or even in the last, from The Rock in, 98? 90s, the late 90s? all the way until today.
I'm not talking about
like,
back then. We're still at the where we were segment. I'm not up to the where we are.
No. I mean, I know, and that's fair because the stats are probably lower, but I mean, the stats are still low. And I'm not saying that it's not getting better because it is getting better, but it's still problematic.
Yeah, the thing is, again, I think it also comes down to if we're going in the Pedro Morales eras or back into the 60s and prior, again, when they were broken down into those territories, some of them don't even have a lot of footage on them, or maybe, I don't know, or they just weren't on Wikipedia. But I'm pretty sure there were a good number of people of color wrestling. I just didn't, of course, they just either don't get talked about, or you have to go into a deeper wrestling knowledge base that's more legit than people who could just go and edit Wikipedia.
What-
but I do get
Well, and
what
Cal
I'm
has
saying,
the
what I'm,
knowledge.
what I'm just saying is about representation. Because like, not only do you have to be you have to be in there, right? You have to be in the game to play it, first of all. But also you have to be in the world of wrestling. It's how popular you are and how the fans get behind you. If you don't have that spark, you might not be made a champion, right? So even like there's a lot of white athletes that were not made champion that we say to this day, even to this day. I'm not talking back then. I'm talking about even now. If you want to include to this day, that we're saying why aren't these people champions? You know, like we're great. You were talking about Becky Lynch a few minutes ago. You know, like she wasn't champion, and it has nothing to do with her color. Or that it's just like it's just how people are represented and how they're accepted. So that could be a factor back then why we didn't have that many color champions.
Well, it could also
anything.
It could also be that people of color only recently got a voice in media. It's been very recently because thank you, social media.
No, I know, but I'm talking about back then about how things weren't represented well, right?
Right.
And
no,
how
I agree.
I'm just trying to block it off into segments, and that's what I'm talking about right now. The segment back then is how things were. I don't think there was many opportunities. Even if you talk about baseball back then, like they had the Negro League and the regular Major League Baseball, right? So you can't say there weren't any great like African American pitchers between 19 like whatever to 1920 because they weren't there really. So like represented.
Yeah.
So
That's
I mean,
why
I kind of get that, but that's also getting into like the type of statistics that people spew where they're like, well, women just didn't want to be doctors and I'm sorry, women are literally more than half of the population. It's not that we didn't want to be, it's that we weren't given the opportunities to be. And that's where it gets kind of squeaky is like, I totally get what you're saying. Like, oh, well, there might not have been, but what were the opportunities back then? And that's just stuff we can't really take into account.
well,
I mean,
but we're talking about WWE, right? Or WWF history. Like back then, we definitely know that it was territorial, correct? So we don't.
Right,
Did like Alicia? Did you go to like the Deep South and look at all the different other league, organizations there and what championships they had, like, and all that?
only not like in depth knowledge because I knew we were just mainly talking about WWE, or F or however you want.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. It's like when we talk about representation, we gotta look at it from both ways.
I totally agree because if you look at it when Yokimo, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. The Japanese woman who became the first women's champion of color. That was back in '68 when the civil rights movement was still, tensions were still high. So when you look at it and you don't get you don't get to see like Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas until '83. It is a reflection of the times of when, I mean, again, tensions are still high or remain high. But again, like you said, it is going to be a reflection of the times and what is being presented. Maybe people didn't even, I almost didn't even know black people look like. That was a dumb thing that I was about to say. Or didn't know that there were black people who wrestled or could get behind until these two. So like I said, I totally can see your side point as well, Kyle, of one, it doesn't always have, color isn't always going to be a factor when it comes to choosing who you're going to represent your brand, so to speak. But when we get later into why diversity was important. But yeah, when you look back at the almost lack of pushing this talent or to saying that we don't know if there are people get behind them, is like some of them didn't get the chance to showcase that.
well, maybe we're doing a poor job of being like, yes, this is where we're from, where we are. but we are trying to make a solid attempt to say, look, things have gotten better, but just because things have gotten better doesn't mean that we have to accept how they are now either. You still have to push for things to get to where you want them to be. So like maybe we're just doing a piss poor job of being like, hey, listen, yes, back in the 60s it was like this, in the 70s it was like this, in the 80s it was like this, but we're trying to show that there's at least some progression, because there is. I mean, Delisha has a big long list here, and it's like, we had a champ in 71, and then we didn't have another person of color champ until 79. That's 8 years. But then we had one in 83. And then we had one 10 years later in, 93. And then we had The Rock in 98. So, okay, yay, we've got 2 in 1 decade. That's progress, right? Like, you know what I mean? Then we had 2 in 1 decade. Then we had 3 in 1 decade. And it's like, yes, there is progression. And yes, it is slow. And yes, that probably comes down to what Cal was saying about, well, how many people of color were wrestling back then? But the whole premise of this is not just to give you a history lesson, but to let you understand that, things are getting better, but they are not where they should be. And that's not just with wrestling, okay? That's with all of media. That's with the United States, okay? I mean, it's something that's a problem all the way around. It's not just like, oh, I'm picking on the WWE. No, it's a problem everywhere, okay? It's not just here.
Well, no, what I would say is, like, since we're going through eras, I want people to understand, like, and we can't just look at it from one perspective. I want them to get all the facts, and, like, this is how, we can't just say, oh, there weren't any. Like, we gotta understand, like, what factors were all put into that mixing bowl,
right,
to understand why there weren't that many. And then now we're going to move on to, like, as we get, like you said, now there's going to be 2 or 3. We have more inclusion of ones that got more popular and stuff like that. We had more cliques and stables that got popular and tag teams that got popular, and they got together, kind of thing, like such. Well, what I want to talk about, what we were, is one of my favorite tag teams back when I was younger, and this is back in the day, and this is the WCW brand that we weren't really talking about, but was Doom. Now, if you don't know who Doom is Butch Reed and Ron Simmons. Ron Simmons, you might know, is Farouk, who became Farouk, then he became Ron Simmons again, who's the one who goes, damn, all the time in those segments, kind of thing. But Ron Simmons and Butch Reed were one of the most dominant tag teams back in WCW back in the day, known as Doom. And I loved them. Like, I had their action figures and everything, and they were cool to watch. And then that evolved into Harlem Heat, which someone mentioned, I think, Entertain mentioned in the chat earlier. Harlem Heat became, like, the next big African-American tag team in WCW, and then they brought them over kind of to WWE in a way, with Booker T. Stevie Ray, I think, got inducted into the Hall of Fame alongside Booker T for the Harlem Heat just 2 years ago or a year ago. But things have changed, and, like, they made factions out of this, because, the Nation of Domination became a huge one, and that's what birthed The Rock. So, like, it did change because things got more, like, I guess, like, they took some of the most popular people and put them together, and then, from there we got The Rock and all that kind of stuff, and, like, Farouk was a big name back then, and Ahmed Johnson, all these guys, like, I think that's where, like, we had more, I guess, I don't know what, like, we had more people participating in. I don't know how to say it. It's just like, because I'm just saying, back then, when I was watching it, I just remember Butch Reed and Ron Simmons, honestly, when I watched when I was little. So, I like, that's why, from my perspective, like, I don't remember seeing many people of color wrestling. There were a lot of Japanese wrestlers, and I was going to get into that, like Great Muta and stuff like that, who were amazing, and, like, they always caught my eye, too. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, he was great. Arguably one of the best matches in the history of all of wrestling against Randy Savage at WrestleMania 3 for the Intercontinental Championship. I guess I'm speaking from experiences where I don't remember many. I didn't have many options when I was younger for me to look up to it and like. That's why when I asked, like, before, and that was, like, in the 80s, like, right, like mid to late 80s. So, like, you're talking about the 70s. If I had, like, only a few options, that's why I ask, when it's, like, segmented by, like, territories, how many options do these people have to be represented? That's what I'm trying to bring up and make you guys see, like, we can't just say it was only that many, because in my eyes, and I didn't really have any, like, people of color champions when I was, like, growing up. Maybe we had Ricky the Dragon Steamboat win, and then, all the stuff that happened in Japan with Great Muta winning there, but, like, not in my era. I've only seen, like, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and, like, Doom and Harlem Heat as champions growing up. And that's, like, mid to late 80s, early 90s kind of thing. So, that's why I bring up, like, how many people actually had a chance because from experience, I know that I didn't have much representation.
Right.
I should clarify why I said that earlier to what I'm bringing up.
Yeah, I get it. And we've been skewing a little negative for a bit, so I want to transition to maybe some positive aspects of seeing of how the Filipino talent has been portrayed on screen. Um, and every now and when I see the movies, now that I review Cal, like every time I see The Rock, I think of Cal now because I just cannot. Was he like? I know you're like what you're a big fan of. Well, was he like your marquee? They got this right person that you've seen when as especially now.
As my wrestling progressed, like my wrestling fandom progressed. Honestly, I never really looked at it. Like it's gonna sound like I'm being contradictory to what I just said, but like for me, I never like followed things because of color. Kind of like it's not like I love this guy because like he is what he is. But like I'm just saying when I saw representation of what I could look at, like what kind of looked like me or whatever. I had very few, but
That's
I
not
just
being
like
critical. That's just the reality that people of color live in.
no, but I'm just saying I didn't. I'm just saying like she asked me if is he what I like is he my I guess I don't know how like
No,
I
I
don't
know
say
he's one of your favorite wrestlers, so it's
like did they get it right? Like I mean
Yeah.
like for me it's just I just like him as a person.
Right? Is he like kind of like your marquee person for you?
Yeah,
Like
because I think he hit on all things. He connects with the audience, and that's probably the most important thing you can do is connecting with the people, and that's why he is the people's champion. Because no matter what, being a heel or a face, he always connected with the people. And there's there's very few people who've done it as long as he has that connected with the people that as much like there's people who actually got tired of The Rock at some point, when he came back because they wanted to see other people. But and then as soon as he starts talking, they fall in love with him like right all over again, kind of thing, and you can't say that for many people. Stone Cold being another in that caliber of people. There's very few, I think, that hit that same mark. But for me, yeah, I connected more with The Rock than with Stone Cold. Because I just love The Rock the way he was, and I was a huge fan of the Nation as well. So, because they've had Ron Simmons, Farouk, but had Ron Simmons who I loved from Doom, and I'm very loyal to the people I follow throughout the years. So like, that's why I like hate the Flares because I love Sting. Like I mentioned this before, like I'm always loyal to those people like that I've loved. So.
yeah, for me, of course it definitely has to be The Rock. Even though the Hardy Boys were the ones who made me get interesting because I thought they were just really cool. But when it came time to understanding charisma and gravitas or whatever, I think The Rock is like there's The Rock and then there's everybody else. And it was him, and then I remember seeing like Jacqueline and China. Maybe not always they were always working. They didn't always get a chance to work together a lot. But Jacqueline, and while she doesn't exactly look like me because of course I'm lighter, but to see like a legit strong like black woman to be able to not only kick ass with the ladies, but she could legit kick ass with the guys too. And it was like, well, I guess I don't know. 8-year-old me, 9-year-old was like, I want to go to the gym. I want to be able to flip a guy on the recess ground, even though I'm not supposed to, because don't try this at home. But to see the women like her in China, and even Lita and Trish could grapple with the guys too, but to see like these legit like strong body built women just be able to just go at it. I think she's really like my only uh person of color female that I really got into as a kid. But even just like you, like consciously, I would say, oh, I like her because she's black. But subconsciously, as I get older and start to, talk to some of my younger cousins who are just getting into WWE, or they have a better shot now of talking to them about different wrestlers. Like some of them don't even know who they are because they just like, well, who's that? Or I never knew about her or something like that. But I do think that there's The Rock who got it right, and I don't know. Jacqueline might probably be a good example because if you disregard the PMS angle with her and is it Sable?
And Meat.
So what?
And meat, that was the M in PMS, wasn't it?
I
I
don't
don't know.
I just remember seeing like them two. And or at the time I actually didn't even know what that meant, guys. I mean the actual PMS symptoms that like behind the scenes like snicker because I hadn't gone through puberty yet. So I was just like, oh yeah, pretty mean sisters, you know. So, I do feel like they let her let her be like she got to stay that strong I will kick your ass type women throughout her career, even if she wasn't utilized always prominently. I feel like for the most part she did get to stick to that persona of just who she is. And I think another great example amongst that era a little bit might be, I mean, I still sometimes go back and forth, but I love me some Booker T. While I didn't follow his career in WCW, when he did land over into W and they let him find his groove, especially when the brand split happened and he was like being really featured prominently on SmackDown. You really got to see his charisma and his ability to grab a crowd, especially when him and Charmel went to King Booker and Queen Charmel. It's like he was a heel, but you still love him because he was just so grabbing. And every time whenever he spoke, I was like just sitting there listening, like, yes, King Booker, I am a follower, even though I'm supposed to not cheer for you. So I think those two, if we're going like in the past of great examples that have happened and that really made an impact on me, it's besides The Rock, again, who's like the marquee. There's him and everybody else. Um, but those are two of the marquee who stuck out to me growing up in WWE. As far if we're just going about our POC champions of our hearts.
What about you?
I only have examples from today, so I'm gonna wait.
I mean, we could keep going because
Well, my problem is that being a white woman, guess what? I didn't pay attention to that stuff when I was younger. You know, it's only been in recent years that I've paid attention to those types of things because now I'm an adult and you know that's a problem. But when I was little, like you know, I mean, you watch because you watch. And I mean, like, I can tell you the women that impacted me because, you know, for once they weren't just eye candy. You know, they weren't just some eye candy on a dude's arm. They were actually wrestling, and that was important. But I don't have any good examples of people of color representation in the past because I wasn't watching from that perspective. I am guilty of my white privilege. So I'm sorry.
And it's good to acknowledge that because like I said, growing up, I didn't notice it. It was really reflective of, well, I would say growing up as a child. I guess I did notice it more as like a teenager, and who's like discovering with self identity and trying to figure out who I want to be or whatever. You do get the good handle more, especially as you learn the world. But I mean, we can even just talk. We can talk about it even as now. I mean, of now as being adults, thinking back, like who were like some examples that they did get right. Um, but like I said,
I feel like they got the New Day right.
yeah, they are probably one of the biggest slash like hottest commodity of groups that we've had in the past decade. Well,
They busted out the box of Bootios and Saiyan armor, and I'll just never forget that, okay? It was just like, so, I mean, I think that their gimmick was good because it wasn't leaning into, or I obviously, again, you know, maybe my white privilege is showing, but, you know, I felt like they didn't lean into something that was racist. You know, like they actually just were a group of dudes who, you know, were wrestling and they are also black. And I don't know, I thought the New Day was handled really well. They got one of the longest tag team runs. The crowd was on their side. And I mean, like, you know, they're just fun. And I think that the WWE utilized them really well when, you know, they were reigning supreme. So I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that the WWE is just hot garbage.
how do you think they've handled the new day pretty well from their I guess their inception to present day.
Well, I know their first initial was it on NXT, or maybe it was their first initial thing into WWE, but they had like I've heard them talk about it, how like their gimmick was like Soul Train, and I was like, oh my god. So I mean, like, the New Day didn't necessarily start off as being, you know, a good example, because like they absolutely played into those, you know, oh, you're black, so we're gonna give you like Soul Train Louisiana vibe, and it's like, what? So like, but the New Day eventually, like, it really wasn't taking with the crowd, and then they were like, well, we don't know what to do with you, and so they were like, well, let us be in charge of it, and then they, you know, created what we know as the New Day now. And I can't remember who it was that was talking about it, but, you know, I mean, I watch like all the little things where they do video games and they prank, and I mean, like, I love the New Day, like, and even if I don't like them wrestling, like, them as individuals, they're some of my favorite people on the planet. So I mean, yeah, I think that the WWE, the New Day is a good example of it going and then them getting it right. Like,
I was listening to their podcast, where they do talk about they're kind of going through like a chapter by chapter of their wrestling careers, and the New Day got formed because of the stalemate, I think I said that word right, of where they were as single competitors, where Xavier Woods was kind of like a joke. Uh, he was paired up, I think, with R-Truth for a little bit, and he came. I think he was also paired with Brodus Clay, I think, for a little bit, and coming out with the Funk the Doctors, or he took on that persona afterwards, something like that. And Biggie was just waiting in the mid card tier, even after he had that initial good run with I believe the IC title. So I believe they got as together as them. I think initially it was actually going to be just Biggie and Xavier, and I think they were looking at someone else, and then paired them with Kofi. But they thought that Kofi didn't need them to, because he was more of the veteran and, I guess, like, higher tiered wrestler. And, you know, they got a lot of gimmicks to them that they were like, this will not work. And it took a lot of going back and forth with them, creative and Vince, or he who shall not be named, as they say on their podcast, of going back and forth and trying to take the silliness of what the creator was giving them. It was like, all right, how can we make this work? And I really think they showcase a good example of taking what you're given and making the best out of it, and trying to like take that identity into your own, so that you can get this over with the crowd. Because if you don't get over with the crowd, you're not on television the next week, and you're not getting paid. So it's a really good fortitude of also sticking your toe in the mud when you know something is not going to work, and also having Vince trust you into knowing that you know it's not going to work. Please let us do X, Y, and Z instead, and gone back and forth. And I really think they've been a really good, even if a lot of fans don't know that story of what's going on in the background before they get to curtain call. I think they have shown a really good story of taking a gimmick that I don't think a lot of people could make work into the big success that they have done, and the way that they're also continually have been able to do so for the last 5-6 years to still be relevant in the fans' eyes. It's a remarkable feat. Cal, what do you think? You think they're probably, as far as the last 10 years or so, do you think they might be one of the biggest success stories of getting over, and also getting good storylines going for them?
Well, it's no surprise that I don't like the New Day. I only like Kofi. I don't like Kofi. Are they good? They're great for the fans. They come out and they dance. So I don't think like it's a good representation. Like, right? Like, when you think of black people, what do you think? Dancers, right? And that's what they do. They come out and dance. That's pretty much all they do. And they wiggle their hips. They shuck and jive. And like, I think like they're clowns. I do like some of their jokes. They're great. You know, I love them as people, like you guys were saying. But wrestling wise, I only really like Kofi. I like Biggie as Dolph's valet, like bodyguard. That was cool. Xavier, I don't have any feelings for at all. As far as if he just stays on the shelf for the rest of his life, I'd be fine. But I love them as their creativity and their hearts that they put into it. That's what I love about them because, you know, they came out of Saints one year for WrestleMania, and I love that. And just so much happiness they put into kids' faces. So, you know, good for them. Like, you know, they put their real heart and soul into it, and they really do support each other as a team. You know, I don't really care much for them because I don't like their, you know, like, people enjoy them, right? That's what it's all about. Entertainment, right? And if they do it. For me, I'm just like, oh man, they just got another group of black guys coming out and dancing. That's how I kind of saw it. But I love Kofi. You know, I'm gonna support Kofi because I love him. I've always loved him. Whether he's Jamaican or he's a preacher from the New Day, whatever he is, I'm gonna, you know, that's what I'm there for. But
I didn't even see that. Again, there's my white privilege. It didn't occur.
Cause and then, like, you know, remember when R-Truth and Sasha were a thing? What do? Their dance. I know he had a dance break with Carmella as well, but before that, him and I think R-Truth and Sasha had the dance break. I'm like, oh, there they go. They got the black people dancing again. Or it was the other guy too. Like, I don't know if it was Apollo Crews, but the other guy who was Cedric Alexander. I think maybe that was with Sasha Banks too. And then they just started dancing. That was their thing. Like, I'm like.
Fair. No, that's totally fair. I didn't even. See, went right over my head. Well, I mean, since you love Kofi so much, I mean, what do you feel about his representation?
I'm glad that. Okay, what the WWE is, the one big thing is it's the universe, right? It's no matter what happens, I think the universe, like Vince always has the last say, but it's whether or not the universe will accept it or not. Correct? Like they'll be booing. We had points where people actually walked out of the main event because they weren't happy about it. I mean, it's not everyone's gonna leave. Not 100% of the audience is gonna leave, but like. They know it's going to go to social media saying people walked out of the main event of your pay-per-view because they didn't like what was being represented in the ring, correct? So it's what the universe is. And I feel like Kofi has been such a good hard worker, and people see that. Like, people see people who've worked hard and haven't been getting their dues. And that's what we always felt about Kofi. Like, everyone's always behind Kofi. And they loved him in Royal Rumbles and the crazy stuff he did. You know, they even love him in the New Day thing. And that was like the voice of the people saying, like, you know, much like how it got behind CM Punk. I think that's when it first kind of started with the universe taking control of how wrestlers were carried along the way. I think it first started with CM Punk. But I think, Kofi was the most recent big, besides Becky maybe, Kofi was the most recent big representation of that. And
oh, yeah.
So, I loved it because finally people were like me, like, oh, this guy really deserves it. Like, you know, like I said, I love Kofi from like Intercontinental Jamaican days, and like seeing him now, like I love when like the people I like finally get like, because I don't like some of the bigger people. I'm always like the people who like whack people, so like, or what people consider whack. Like, you know, people like Daniel Bryan, like I don't like and stuff like that. Right. But he was one of those indie guys, but I didn't watch indie, so I can't relate. So maybe if I was an indie guy, but CM Punk connected with me really well, like for some reason. I don't know why, but he just connected with me really well.
Because he's a badass and he fucking told it how it was. Yeah. I love CM Punk too. It's like, yeah!
And see,
sticking it to the man!
Maybe I don't like Daniel Bryan because I love Miz. Like, I followed Miz from MTV days. So, like, the fact that they had, like, that Miz, one of my favorite promos of all time is when Miz cut that promo on Daniel Bryan at that Smack Talk, saying like, I don't get love wrestling. You don't love wrestling or whatever. You know, like that. He actually got like teary eyed and all that. That was like one of my favorite promos. But anyway, I digress. Whole thing is that the universe is behind the people, and Kofi took that and they carried it. It's like they walked hand in hand to WrestleMania and they won it together. And that's what I feel like, and that's moments that like mean a lot. Like, so like, can you do it without the New Day? Yeah, but when you don't have him without the new, like when he's not the champion, what else is he gonna do? Just throw him back with the New Day. Let's have him go dance and do goofy stuff.
I was just asking because, like, from the New Day, my very next, basically everything he said is exactly what I was gonna say about Kofi, and I was like, you already on a count. Tell us about Kofi and how you feel about that line, because I feel like that was really handled well. Not only do we get to see him struggle, but I was completely and totally shocked that the WWE out-scripted the blatant problem that is racism in the WWE with Kofi. Because, like, he scripted that line that he said to Vince when he was like, I can't believe you don't have somebody like me ever holding the belt. And I was like, one, I got to give a little bit of a nod to the writers because, like, it takes a lot of balls to go, by the way, we're a bunch of racists. Maybe we should correct this and call it out. And I was like, what? So, like, I thought that was pretty cool.
So, but see, the one thing about that I always complain about, or I don't really complain about out loud, but I tell people, like, when we're having discussions, is did he win it because he complained because of the racism? You know, like, I want him to win it because he deserved it, not because they're calling out the boss for being racist and they're like, oh, let's give it to him because otherwise people are gonna think we're racist. You know what I mean? That's the things that I care about, like when it comes to like discussing it in the political sense, where like I want him to win it because he deserved it, the people were behind him, and that's how I felt. That's why he won it, not because they're like the writers are like, hey. We don't have a black guy winning.
Right. Oh, this is a hot topic.
Yeah.
Like, no.
I don't think that would be like the sole reason. I do think it's because they were like, wow, the fans have really gotten behind him to this monster vocal level, and it was like, and you know, our underdog guy that we were going to use, Mustafa Ali at the time, who got injured, they're like, crap. Well, even though we just thrust him into the spot last minute, the fans are really taking a liking to him. Merch is still going up like crazy, and it was like, all right, let's do it. Let's put the strap on him and let's see what we can do with this run. I feel like that was probably more of the conversation. Like, hey, the fans are behind him. The moment is right. Let's give him his WrestleMania moment, and let's see what Kofi can do when he's the face of the company.
But do you know why I disagree?
You know, he's worked his ass off the last 10 years of his career. All right, let's give it the green light. But let's go with it.
I want to say one more thing about this quick. And you know, I've been saying this forever on AfterMat and all that kind of stuff. Is give the people their own credit, because I always say, like, when they had the first ever Women's Royal Rumble, you know how many times they say that? First ever Women's WrestleMania main event. It's like WWE wants the credit for doing something, not like they earned it themselves, kind of thing. So the reason why I don't think that, I feel like Kofi, like, I understand, like, the WWE Universe carried Kofi, we went to WrestleMania together, we won it together, kind of thing. I agree with that, and I love that, but I also, on the other side of me, like, because I like to look at things all the time from every angle and every fact going in, how many times they say, after he won, this is the first ever African or born champion. First ever African born champion. Here he is in Africa with African kids with a belt. Like, he went to Uganda or whatever he did. Like, remember? And they showed that. And they, so, like, it's not like they didn't do it for themselves. Like, I swear, like, they're doing it for themselves. That's why I can't, like, be as happy, because I see that other angle. And that's why I just want people to get what they deserve and be it for themselves. Not because the company's going to be like, hey, look what we did. We put a black guy out there. We sent to Africa on our dime to play with little African kids. And, like, we got the women out of the kitchen into the main event. And look at us. We did that, not them. Like, right. We got to say it every 5 seconds. Like, that's what I hate.
They absolutely want a pat on the back, and you're not wrong. But what I say to people all the time about, like, they were like, oh, they just gave it to Kofi. You know, the fact that he was black and it was time. And it's like, even if he was a diversity hire, for lack of a better word, it doesn't matter. What Kofi did is he took that diversity hire, that, oh, well, let's just let him do this thing, maybe, and he fucking ran with it. And it was him who made it at the end of the day. So, I mean, like, the thing is because I've had some haters totally be like, well, whatever, they just gave it to him because they were like, oh, let's call it the racism, and this is a popular thing. And it's like, even so, the WWE couldn't have sold it unless Kofi was the one that people were following. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right, but then after he got it, though, how many times did, like, that was the first thing when he came out, Michael Cole's like, and here he is, the first African-born, like, that was like the first thing out of their mouths. Like, it's just... Yeah, they got to milk it for everything it's worth after he's.
Oh, they absolutely do, yeah. And that'll be a thing that will always be around, because at the end of the day, the WWE is going to do things that are trendy. You know, like, why did they have, you know, Evolution? It was in 2017, 2018, 2017. I don't know, but it was right after, you know, the third wave feminism started really yelling and being like, you know, we need better representation, and women are here loud, and we have a microphone too. And, you know, and yeah, they're absolutely going to ride the coattails of what's actually popular in media currently. But I mean, at least think of all the little kids, Cal, who get to see Kofi. And even though it's the first, they don't see that because they're kids, and they're just like, look, there's somebody like me standing up on that podium. And at the end of the day, I feel like that's more important than hating on the WWE for being, oh, he's the first African-born championship. Like, I can get past that because well, we all know I'm the WWE hater amongst this group, but you know, I mean, like at least there's a bunch of little black kids going, that could be me one day. You know, you just opened a whole bunch of doors to kids who
Yeah.
didn't ever think that was an opportunity, and now it's become one.
So that's yes, that's why I agree with you. I agree with that aspect of that because I was saying like when I was younger, I didn't really look at it like, oh, that's a color champion, but I'd be like, oh, those are the ones that are like kind of like me, then I like them kind of
Right.
thing, and that's how you know when you're a younger kid, that's what you think.
Yeah.
Of them. Now when they 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when they're doing their own after talk and they go back and they say that, they're gonna be like,
That's right.
remember the time that guy was like, oh, even though Kofi won the first time, the thing they always said was that the first ever African born champion. It makes a point there, like they'll see that and they'll know.
That's right. Anyways, I digress. Sorry.
But there's other people besides the New Day. We got great people, like even the women's division. We like the picture right here. We got Naomi, Sasha Banks, Tamina, Nia Jax. In the men's division, Zelina Vega as well. Men's division, Andrade, Garza. What do you guys think of like what we have right now going on, and even years before that too?
Yeah, I think that right now we are in probably the best flourishing moment for diversity that we have been in a very long time, and honestly, I think I can't always give the credit to NXT, but I really do think it's because a lot of the fan shift focus has been shifting more to, yes, we like to be entertained, but we want to see good quality wrestling still as well. And a lot of the focus have been going back to indie, especially with now with the internet, that we have more access to different types of companies across the world, whether it be New Japan or ROH or now even AEW on the bigger scale, in TNA and AAA and Lucha Underground. People get to see a lot more athleticism going on. Not to say that WWE never was, because I think they're always strictly athletic, but a lot of times they went into a lot of more soap opera writing that it kind of took away from what was actually going on in the ring. At least for me, that was. But I feel like in the new wave or the new generations that we were getting, like our Sasha Bankses, our um, our Naomi's, our Adam Cole's, our um, Shayna Baszler's, and all those folks who some of them got their starts on the scene a lot. I think people are turning more towards, one, we do want to see people of all different types of backgrounds and all different types of writing going on in our wrestling, but we also just want to see good talent get showcased. I think at the end of the day, that is what it comes down to with the fans. Is they want to see good talent get showcased, and then a lot of times I feel like they're still so stuck in older ways that they don't know what gems they have sitting in front of them. Because for a while, I didn't really know or care about Naomi. I knew she was athletic. I knew that girl could flip around in the ring like nobody else's business, and probably.
Oh, another dancer, by the way.
Hmm?
Another dancer, by the way.
True. I mean, but that was actually her profession before she even came into WWE. But when I got to know her a little bit on Total Divas, I was like, wait, this girl has a legit personality that I don't get to see on my main television, I guess at the time, twice a week on Raw and SmackDown. And I was like, well, what's up with that? Why can't I see this person that I'm seeing out in the real world, so to speak? Why don't I get to see that personality here on television? So I feel like now that they seem to be able to give more or lend more either time or spotlight to those people, even if it's just for a week or two, to give them a shot to get over with the audience. I think we're seeing a lot more opportunities not handed out. I don't want to make it seem like they're just like, here you go, but like they're affording a lot more opportunities to a lot of people of color to have that chance to get in front of the crowd and make them go one way or the other, to where it's not WWE saying, here, this is the person you're going to root for. I mean, they still do that, of course, and this is not, but a lot of the fans are like, you know what, I like you, you know. Does that make sense? I feel like I was talking in circles.
One thing I forgot to mention, I'd be remiss if I don't mention it, and because you brought it up when you said athleticism, when you go back to where we were, I can't forget the cruiserweight division of WCW with all the luchadors and the Japanese wrestlers that single-handedly stole WCW TV and wrestling back in the day. So I can't forget to mention those because they were great. Sorry.
I remember because you mentioned it every time you mentioned 205 Live.
Yeah, cruiserweight division, WCW. Nothing will beat that. Back when Lionheart Chris Jericho was back there, but talk about people like Rey Mysterio and Psychosis and Jushin Thunder Liger, Ultimo Dragon, all those guys of color that were fantastic back then. La Parca, and I can just go on and on, but there were so many great ones back then.
I actually have Naomi down as a bad example.
Yeah, see, dancer.
Yeah, well, not only is she a dancer, but like, she had her reign in 20 straight up forgettable, and I felt like they really did her a disservice because that one to me more than Kofi felt like because remember her 2016 thing happened right after the Pulse nightclub shooting, and one of her main things was that she was from Orlando, and they were having WrestleMania in Florida. And it's such a shame to me that they handled it so poorly because, like, right after the Pulse nightclub shooting, that was a huge thing about her getting the title is like, oh, this is for Orlando and blah, blah, blah. And it so much felt like I remember watching that and being like, it felt like they gave it to her simply because Pulse happened, and it was like, that's such a disservice to her as a wrestler because she is actually good. And I don't know, they didn't really push the platform. Like if they were going to run on, I'm a hometown girl and I got this because, Pulse happened or whatever. They could have actually taken that and gone somewhere with it. But instead they just were like, here's her title run. Okay, let's forget it now. And I mean, like literally the most memorable thing about her title reign for me was her glowing belt. Like that's what I remember. I remember it being right after Pulse because, I've got I hit my thing, but I got my memorial tattoo, right? And so like, I remember Pulse, but like, I remember Naomi coming out and being like, from Orlando, and I was like, oh, so that's why they gave her the belt. Like that match was terrible. I remember watching it being like, this is a bad match. This is a bad title match. And then it was just such a shame because she does have so much talent, and I think that she deserved so much better than that. And the most memorable thing about her championship reign, at least for me, was her glowing belt. And it's like, that's so terrible because she's great.
For another person, I think, who's kind of been glossed over for looking at that picture is Tamina, because I think she's one of those people who's put time in and work in it and she also has that lineage with her father and everything. So like, I feel like she's just been like that jobber that we have nowadays that just goes out and loses to people. Always the first one knocked out. Like you see, like if you watch WrestleMania, all 5 team up against her and stuff. And she has a lot of talent and stuff. I guess she's just not good on the mic, but that's someone who I feel glossed over. Another person who I'm like very, very mixed about is, you guys know I loved her. She was my number 1 WWE wifey, then fell off the map, was Sasha Banks. Because like I found out she's a bitch in real life, so I was like, oh, well, then I can't deal with that. So, but like,
right.
Like when she first won, like what can you say about her title reigns besides forgetful? You can't even say forgetful because you'd have to remember her actually having it, because she lost it like 5 minutes later. Like she'd win the title, then like she'd walk out, trip on like the sidewalk and get pinned right outside. Like it was the 24/7 7-Eleven 365 European Hardcore Championship kind of thing. Like she'd lose it immediately after. So like I can't even tell you like how long her reigns have been, how many she's had. But I feel like she's someone who's got the wrestling, who's got the character, so that's someone who I don't think they treat that well. But like I said, I also find out she's like a bitch, so I don't know how she deserves it. People who I'd like to see besides Sasha, possibly Zelina. And I know we're not to where we go from here, but there's someone from NXT. But right now,
open ended discussion.
No, I'm gonna keep it with what we got right now. So like Zelina's probably one of them, but Sasha as well. Andrade, I also like to see the main event picture, because I think when we went to the NXT that one night in Philly, I believe it was, he fought, I think Johnny Gargano is one of the best matches we've seen, or at least I've seen live. I think we talked about it afterwards, saying it's one of the best matches we've seen live. Johnny Gargano, or was that in Brooklyn? Whatever that was, when we both went to NXT TakeOver, it was Andrade versus Gargano in that match, and that was just one of the best matches we've ever seen. He is the complete package, I think, because he could speak on the mic, even though I think Zelina does talk for him a lot. But I think he's great. The worst part about him, obviously, is Charlotte Flair. But they don't really bring that up much on camera. So I don't know. I think he's someone that I feel the WWE universe can get behind. I think it's just I don't know why he doesn't.
I'm kind of disappointed in you.
Why?
This was your time to talk about your guy, and you did.
My guy. Who else do I have? Let's see. Let me think.
We already talked about The Rock and Kofi.
No, the leader of your stable. Like, what do you mean?
Oh, Jinder?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but Jinder had his time, and like that's great. Now the next coming up is like my Temple of Doom stereotypical tag team in NXT. I don't even know what their names are. Where they're straight out of the Temple of Doom movie. I'm like, I texted my friend. Well, Delisha, you know Raj. I texted Raj. I'm like, dude, the stereotypical Indians are coming out right now with the dots on their heads, wearing the temple garb, coming out, about to eat a snake right out of it and pull out someone's heart.
Right,
Like
new NXT guys.
What?
What guys are you talking about?
The NXT guys.
Yeah. Okay.
But let's talk about where we go. But yeah, no, Jinder. Yeah, I love Jinder, man. Like that's the one first legit real representation we get because like we had Great Khali. I know we had Great Khali. But Jinder, he was great on the mic. He was that heel that you'd love to hate, kind of, and he can wrestle well, so he was great.
He dropped the ball on him. You can say it. He dropped the ball.
What can you do? Like they always gotta like. He's like one of those like placeholders for people, right? Between significant title reigns, he's the guy in the middle that kind of goes by the wayside. But he did a great job. To tell you a testament how good of like he was to us is that like every time he wrestled in a pay per view main event or a pay per view match, I'd get my dad in here to watch. I'm like, look, like it's a legit Indian guy. Like I mean, he's from Canada, but he's an Indian guy. He speaks Hindi and all that. But he, and my dad would watch with me and he'd love it. Like he's like, it's great. I mean, he's also very stereotypical with the whole turban and the music and when the Singh brothers came out and did Bhangra and all that. But hey, whatever. We'll take it because we don't get much representation at all. So once every 10, 20 years, we'll get it with Great Khali, and then we'll get him, and then we'll get the Temple of Doom tag team 10 years from now. We'll be set.
Guys, I miss him a little bit. Like, he was featured 20, I think the 24 doc or whatever that they did on Drew McIntyre, and they're still really good friends. And so, like, you were seeing, like, them having questions. It was like, oh, this Jinder. I don't know what he's doing right now. But
and Heath Slater's going to be the next one to win the championship now, because we got the 3-man band that's going to get to you.
They talked about possibly as a like for shits and giggles just doing it again. His second gen Daivari as I call him, but is he his brother?
Sean Daivari?
Who's in the cruiserweights division. Again, another really talented wrestler who actually likes to represent his heritage, whether it be in his gear or in some of his promos. I feel like a lot of times there's nothing wrong with representing where you come from. I think a lot of times that WWE will take that ball and run with it 3,000 miles in one direction when they didn't have to. And also, I wanted to pose a question to you both about one stereotypical trope that you would like to see them not do ever again. I kind of want to start because I kept thinking, every time I think of bad examples of, especially growing up and coming into my era of watching it like on a very consistent basis, I would like them to stop with the minority like gang representation, or not gang representation, but like hood representation. I guess the biggest, even though the fans love them or whatever, it's Crime Time. And like it, even then when I was watching, I think I was still at, like low teenage level or something like that, and I just feel like, really, we're gonna go with the hood guys who like to steal things and do crime, and then on the other section we would have like the Mexicos coming out on lawnmowers and stuff. And I was like, really, this is what we're doing? And so like those kind of like minority like stereotypes, I mean they have gotten away with it in a great detail now, but I want that stricken from the record. I feel like the only people who can get away with it and make it fun would probably be like Lucha Underground or something like that, because I feel like it would be like a fourth wall breaking type of storyline rather than WWE just taking stereotypes and be like, oh yeah, this is funny. No, it's not. So that's what I said. What's a trope of people of color?
Well, I want to point something out, because there is a a distinguishing feature or a thing between racism and stereotypes, right? So
True.
like, because I think
I just
Crime
thought it
Time was more of racism, right? And the Mexicools was more of a stereotype.
Okay.
And for me, that's how I look at it, I guess. I'm not endorsing either, but I love stereotypes because they make good jokes. So I did like the because like a lot of good humor came out of that. Well, not only just that, but I think when CM Punk was fighting Alberto Del Rio, he had the mariachi band with like the thing like, and he was one of the people in the mariachi band. Like that was pretty funny, like pretty cool.
I think
that.
that's just
Like,
I think that's a nod to its culture, but also it was a good story beat to where.
but that's still a stereotype. What I'm trying to say, like sometimes stereotypes can work in the favor of them, like when it happens, especially when. Another thing is the culture. When you talk about culture, though, then you talk about the mask of a luchador, and when other wrestlers, like when Jericho dressed up as Pentagon Jr. in AEW, I don't know about that, but like AEW, like, and he pulled it off, like that, you know. So there's culture, I think stereotypes, and then there's racism, and I think it goes in that gradient, in my opinion.
I wasn't going in like the racism way. It was more like tropes that they've like done.
No, I know what you're saying. I was just trying to clarify the issue with the Mexicals because I love the lawnmower thing. That was hilarious.
Yeah, like it was entertaining, but at the same time, just like, but really, or maybe if they were just written a little bit better, maybe I wouldn't.
But how'd you feel about Eddie coming out in the lowrider?
Again, I was younger, so I didn't even really.
That's the same thing. Then that's the same thing. Then
true, that is true. But
so that's what I'm trying to say. Like sometimes it works towards their character, whereas if you're blatantly being discriminated against that race, whereas calling these black people criminals. I think that is where racism comes in, where stereotypes come in. There's one segment with Booker T when he's trying to run away from Stone Cold. He hotwired a car, and he goes, just like riding a bike. And then he got into the car and drove away because he stole the car. So
I thought that was a nod to his actual background, but okay.
Oh, maybe. I don't know, but I would say that's race. Like, I would think that's racism as opposed to a stereotype. Whereas, like, sometimes they're using it for their actual character gimmick. Because that's what we talked about back in the day. So they were all lumped in. The Japanese people were like the sumo wrestler, high-flying, theatrical people. The Samoan people were all, like, islanders that are, like, very unrefined, cruel people kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, the Russians were communists that came out. So, like, as much as, like Nicole said earlier, as much as things change, some things do still stay the same. I granted it's less often now because we live in a society where you can't even joke about that like nowadays. So you that's why I kind of like. I'm not saying I'm racist, but I love like making stereotypical jokes. Like I'm not good. I don't ever hate on anybody like that in terms of their race or anything. But like if I saw the Mexicools coming out,
you're a person of color. You can't be racist.
Yes, you can. I can. Because you could be
prejudiced.
I could discriminate against other races. As long as I'm discriminating against a race, I feel like I would be racist. But I'm not saying I am racist. I'm saying if I saw Mexicools come out, I'd laugh. I'd applaud that because that's their character. That's their gimmick. Like, I wouldn't say that was racist. I would say that's stereotypical in my sense. But to get back to your question, what gimmick would I want to see gone? I was going to say maybe the kabuki thing, but I love that they only talk in Japanese when they're doing their promo. That's great. I love the makeup, their elegant costumes. I love all that. So I don't know if I could say that. Maybe for me as an Indian, have them stop coming out with turbans and dots and stuff like that. I mean, that's not racist. It's stereotypical. So I'd love it too. Yeah. It's funny. It's funny. Like I would laugh at it because my dad and I, when my dad sees Jinder Mahal coming out like in a turban and the Singh brothers doing Bhangra, my dad laughs. You know, it's just funny. It's like, you know, at least we're getting some representation, I guess. Maybe black people dancing, I'd get rid of that. I don't know.
People aren't the only people who dance though.
But that's what like the Funkadactyls, okay, and Naomi, like the New Day, Cedric Alexander and Sasha when they were attacking, like that's what they did. That like the stop and dance. Oh my God, can we forget R-Truth? Like that's stuff that they did. That's all they did. Like, you know, I mean not all they did, but like that was like.
And let's be real, white people don't really dance. I mean, like name one white person when they come out to their music.
Carmella.
Ready, go.
Carmella.
Oh yeah, you right.
But also, let's not forget Booker T's move was a spinneroonie. Like he'd stop the match to dance, just to, you know, then do his finisher after that. So I'm just saying, like maybe the dancing thing like is getting old for like blacks and stuff like that. I don't know. That's just me. But what about you, Nicole?
That's a hard question for me. Because obviously, I mean, I don't know which one I would get rid of. I mean, for me, I like I have a big problem because I love Ember Moon, and I already said this earlier, but I don't like gimmicks where they turn people of color into like animals or monsters or something like that, because to me that feels very racist. It feels like you are playing into, oh look, people of color are animalistic, whereas that's just not true. And so I mean, like, Ember Moon is the only one I can think of right now, and that could just be my brain being on all other kinds of media, because they do this all the time in media. They're like Twilight. It's like, what the hell? Like, here's Native Americans, let's make them all wolves. What?
Yeah, but they made all the white people vampires. If you gotta think about it, they made all the white people vampires.
No, there was the one black guy. Don't you remember the token one?
Well, okay, but you know what I mean. Like, you can't, because they were monsters in that. It was all monsters. So I can't think that's of an example.
That's true.
But also, but Brock Lesnar is the Beast incarnate, right? And then they had Mantar back in the day. They had Mantar, who was a Minotaur and a man, and he was a white dude. The Berserker, the Barbarian, all white people. Oh, Barbarian's actually.
But the thing is it's not problematic when you're doing it to a white person. It's problematic when you're doing it to people of color, because that's another way for white people to belittle people of color. So what if
it's a person of color putting that white person in that thing, saying, "Ha, we're gonna get him with this one"?
No,
it's just not. It could have been me making the Mantar thing back in the 1980s. Me writing that script for that.
Well, and it sounds terrible because, like, I really can't think of one. You said what stereotype would you get rid of? My brain immediately went to stop using cheating for women. But, like, I literally hate that. Like they did that with Naomi, like, a year ago. They were like, oh, we're going to have her pretend to cheat on Jay. And I'm like, or the other way around, where, like, I hate that, the jealous woman gig. And it's like, it's stupid. But I can't think of one really for people of color. Like, the only thing I can think of is stop making them seem like monstrous and or animalistic in a way.
I also want to also give some mention to, so we're talking about a lot of people of color being like for black and Hispanic and stuff like that. Well, a lot of the Japanese wrestlers that we're like not really talking about, Asuka and Io Shirai and Kairi Sane, they've been really good over the last year, in my opinion. They've been doing very well, so I'm glad to see them doing well. Shinsuke's been falling to the wayside, unfortunately, but those women have been doing great. As for other races such as like Middle Eastern, I don't like. I'm not on that Mansoor train. I think that's one of those things that they're throwing in your face as well. Like, look at me, I represent Saudi. You guys don't watch those pay-per-views, but I have to watch them. And every pay-per-view is like, okay, here's Mansoor, here's your guy, guys, look at him, look, here he is. And then like after he has to have the speech, and you gotta speak half in Arabic and half in, I apologize if it's not Arabic, but I'm sure some type of dialect from there, and half in English, just so it's like, here's your guy kind of thing. And what I read on some dirt sheets, that they're actually getting tired of that. So I guess they feel like me, where it's like, stop, like saying like, hey, this is us doing this for you kind of thing, let them be them kind of thing. But one person who I wasn't fond of, but I really he really started growing on me, is Mustafa. I don't know what I should call him, Mustafa Ali or Mustafa Ali again. I don't know what you want to call him, but Delisha told me about him back in the day, and then when I first saw him, I was like, oh, yeah. He started to grow on me. I liked how after the Kofi thing, not like, I know, because that was just pushes during the Kofi thing, but then he got hurt. After that, I'm like, wow, like this guy's very genuine. He loves his family and all that. I saw like that backstage promo they had for him. And he started growing on me. So like Middle Eastern wrestlers are getting a bigger role nowadays. Even I think Authors of Pain, one is Indian, I think, and one is either Middle Eastern or Spanish. So it's cool seeing more representation in different races other than just Spanish, Japanese, and black. Right. So I like how it's extending out more. And sure. Simone totally back in the day too as well. Simone was more back in the day as well. But yeah, I like seeing that.
I mean, I know she's probably not the best example, but we do still have even I think Aaliyah down in NXT representing for Middle Eastern or Indian.
Middle Eastern. She's Middle Eastern.
Middle Eastern women. She's still continuously getting worked out on NXT, like, cause she's kind of like the work. She's not. I mean, I would never call her a jobber. She's more like the workhorse type of person. Like at the moment, I don't see her getting to getting out of NXT, just because I think she still needs some mic work, or crowd work, I should say, to be more correct. But she's continuously have gotten like really good in the ring. If you've seen her from like when she first started out to even now, you're like, dang, that girl put in the work for sure. So I do think that a lot of other races that we're not used to seeing are one, getting access to the training across the globe, not just in the U.S., but like across the globe, get access to the training to maybe one day make it to one of these bigger companies to get showcased.
So may I ask you guys a question now?
Yep.
Here's for what we have on the main roster, either Raw or SmackDown, not NXT. Since we're gonna go to that soon. What we got now, one superstar of color. Each of you pick. It can be the same one if you want. I have mine. I know who I want. To get the Kofi push, like
Get the what?
the Kofi, like they really deserve it. They're someone of color that you can finally see getting to that main stage, winning the W title at WrestleMania possibly, and not have it turn like, oh, he or she's the first ever so and so champion, because just that, like, they're of color, they're finally getting their due, and they're getting that Kofi universe thing. Who would you guys choose as your selection?
So you go first, 'cause I'm still thinking. I'm thinking.
Well, mine would be Ember Moon, obviously.
Ember Moon? Okay, I can see that.
I think she's great. She has such fantastic talent. She just gets overlooked all of the time. But she doesn't really, we don't know anything about her. Like, she has no promos. She has no crowd win over because they don't spend any time on her. But the thing is Ember Moon is from Dallas, and I have met her in person, and she's really cool. And I think that she could be that if they gave her the opportunity.
Yeah, that's true. Everything I know about Ember Moon as the person, I know from Up, Up, Down, Down, and that's a problem.
I just know her from her howl to when she does the Stone Cold Stunner off the top. That's all I know. And that she's friends with Alexa Bliss, and she looks like Janine.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, we don't know anything about her, so I mean, I know it's hard. What are you talking about? She's not even a character, and it's like, no, but like maybe it's because I got to meet her, like, and that was really cool. And I don't know, like, it's one of those things where, like, she was at the NXT takeover that I was at, and like we stayed, and she was like walking around talking to people, and she was all like, "Oh, thanks for coming out." I'm like, "Oh my God, you're from Dallas." I didn't even know. And so, like, we sat there and chatted for like 15 minutes. And the thing is like, after that, I just fell in love with her. I thought she was fantastic. And she has such a great personality, and it's such a shame that they don't do anything with her. So I know that it sounds weird for me to pick Ember Moon when she's not really a character, but if they gave her the opportunity, I really think that the crowd would like her.
And I could throw it back to, you guys can come back to this question, is someone who back in the day you don't feel got the push that they should have, of color, that should have got, like, could have been the next Rock kind of thing. So back then, and then eventually my third question will be, who do you see now want to see get, like, I mean, in the future to be the next, like, future down the road, kind of down the way. So we're talking about right now, then also you guys can throw in your back then. So for me, back then would it be someone like Mark Henry. I love Mark Henry. I think he's great on the mic, great talker. I just feel like he's put into terrible gimmicks like the Mae Young giving birth to a hand, sexual chocolate, all that kind of stuff is so stupid. He's, a world's strongest man, kind of like the Tony Atlas route that happened. A world-class bodybuilder, he's a world's strongest man. But the difference is that he was great on the mic. Mark Henry was great on the mic and also great in the ring. So I think someone like Mark Henry should have got a good push. Even Ron Simmons, when he went to become Farouk, instead of being Farouk, I wish as Ron Simmons he was like a bigger name. As for now, someone I would think is like Andrade, because I think Andrade is great, except for Charlotte Flair. But I think he's someone who could just, take off. Do you have one for your back in the day, Nicole, or Delisha, got both yours?
I don't have one for back in the day.
Right now, I was gonna say Andrade, but you kind of talked about him a lot already.
So what? Do it anyway.
Yeah, I said you can pick the same one.
Listen, we're doing this for us at this point because there's two people viewing, and
No, I really think that Andrade, like Kelsey has it all. He has the in-ring capability. He has the charisma. He's good looking. He is. and I know he doesn't get a lot of my time, but I also think that's an advantage because I feel like even though Zelina his like mouthpiece, so to speak, as his manager, I think that when he does speak, he's saying something important, so you're gonna listen more. But I really think that he could definitely take the main title and make a and if given the opportunity, make a good run with it. Because I think he's just awesome. And maybe someone in the past. I don't know. I feel like we hadn't seen at the time a good run for maybe Shelton Benjamin. I just sometimes feel like he got shafted or he got relegated to the mid card role for I think he's won IC championship. Um,
And
and
tag team.
then they kind of not made him like I guess in a way, yeah, made him a joke with his mom showing up and causing chaos in the back. It was just weird, but I do feel like he really could have done something as like in his. I mean, not to say he couldn't still do it now, but as definitely back then that really was kind of his prime when the fans were really behind him with his athletic features and he could talk on the mic. And there's a reason why it was used to help other people over because he could do his job. And what was your other question?
That was it. We're gonna for the next part. I was gonna ask
Okay.
who do you think is gonna be the future star? So if we're moving on to where we go from here, should I go? Are we going to that now, or do we have anything else to
Well,
say?
I'll let Nicole do her from the past star.
I don't have one.
Oh, you don't have one? Oh, okay.
I don't have one.
So yeah, I do think that we are in a good space right now, and that the future is very promising. And one that I'm looking forward to seeing more of is well, there's kind of two on the women's side, and of course I'm gonna go to NXT because that's my show. I love that show. The two that I think have a really good shot would be Mia Yim, who's really great. She's got it's not, maybe not a unique look, but like she's got that swagger that you just like want to like get behind and like like oh man she's so cool, like I want to be her friend. And actually Cal, go ahead because I need to look up her name to make sure I am saying it right.
Wait, what? You don't know how to say your favorite wrestler's name properly?
No, I didn't. She's not my favorite. I said this is the one I'm talking about now. Who, for the future, I think she has a good promise.
She's pictured right there. I figured that's like your favorite wrestler of all time, pictured right there. Because you love her so much, and I despise her.
I don't.
But
oh, Bianca. Well,
Yeah.
I feel like she's already there. She's at this train stop. She just got to get on, and it's about to take off. Because now she's being more debuted on the main roster. And it's probably already noted of how much I love Bianca Belair, so I thought that just would have been a given. I was just trying to give a shine to someone people may not know about that they might be want to look forward to in the future. But actually, I could probably just ask my Google machine.
For me, I think it would be Keith Lee because I really fell in love with Keith Lee. He's really awesome. Seeing a big guy do the things he could do, like a luchador, because I love luchadors. So the stuff that he could do with the matches he had with Dominik Dijakovic and all that, they were great. They had the three best of three or whatever match. Then they ended up fighting again, and they also fought in like a 3-way match with like that whatever guy, Archer maybe. I have no idea, but this guy Keith Lee is great. He's good on the mic. The fans are behind him. But I just love his the in-ring skills, because a big man that can move like that, oh, that's trouble. He's like Mark Henry mixed with Rey Mysterio, and stuff like that. Like, it's great. I don't know. That's who I'd like to see in the future. I do have some other people that notable to mention, but I'll let Nicole go first.
I was gonna say it was Kaden Carter. I was thinking of, who is I've only seen her.
Is she that bootleg Ember Moon?
No. He's more punk rock than that. Shut up.
Let me look it up. Wait, if it's who I'm thinking of, it's the bootleg Ember Moon.
No, I think it
That
is
is so funny.
He's not a bootleg Ember Moon. You shut your mouth, Kyle.
Oh yeah,
No, if I
definitely
had to-
bootleg Ember Moon.
If I had to pick somebody from NXT, because I mean, I apologize. I just haven't really been watching WWE, and NXT is probably the best WWE show, hands down. But I would say Bianca. I caught a match of hers like a couple weeks ago when I was like scrolling through YouTube, and I was like, huh, I kind of like this girl, and I had never heard of her because I mean, I really haven't been watching, which sounds terrible because I'm gonna go do AfterMat and I'm struggling to answer all the questions because I haven't watched in like 8 months. I decided to move and do everything else instead, and I just haven't had time for wrestling, and it's been fun. Now COVID-19.
Other people, I would have to say, are like, I like Io Shirai a lot too because she's the genius of the sky, right? That's her name. That's her nickname, the genius of the sky. So as you guys know, I love like luchador high flyers, so she fits the bill as well. Someone I feel like is going really really under the radar, very under the radar. Hasn't really made much of a splash yet, but has actually made a splash in the WWE ring at SummerSlam last year with his father, is Dominic, Rey Mysterio's son. The few moments that he had in the ring at SummerSlam against Brock Lesnar, those were like great. Him doing the double 619, then the splash off the top with his father, and the double pin. And then he took a German suplex from Brock. Unfortunately, he was out of the match after that. Like one German suplex, come on, kid, you gotta get better stamina than that, or better health bar, more HP or something. You gotta level up. But yeah. He's something to look forward in the future. He's not even showcased on NXT at all either, but I know he's at the Performance Center working and stuff like that. So that's someone to keep your eye out for, maybe NXT in the future. But right now, like I said, my pick is Keith Lee, but that's someone flying under the radar, another luchador, like I like to say. But Io Shirai as well, because I love my high flyers.
And Dominic would be kind of like, not like a big guy, but like a tall guy who can kind of like Dominic.
Yeah. Dajakovic. They're gonna fight for who could be called Dominic from now on. Dominic versus Dominic for the Dominic title.
Someone's losing half their name.
Yep.
But
if you're Dajakovic is a cool name to have by itself, or if you're Dominic Mysterio, it'll be Mysterio Jr. anyway. So it's pretty cool regardless.
Mysterio is already a junior, so he have to be Mysterio III.
No, he'll just be Mysterio.
Mysterio Jr.
No, I mean, but he's Dominic Mysterio, so it'll just be Mysterio.
Okay. Or D Mysterio.
Yeah. Oh, he can't be. He's not Junior. He'll just be Mysterio.
We'll go all Fast and Furious and just call him Dom. You know.
Oh, that too. Depends. Or it could be like Inick. Like it's what part of their name did they kick out? And if it's just Inick, then Nicole's gonna fight them for the Nick part. Then their name's just gonna be I.
That's right.
Yeah, I am actually looking forward to see him like actually be a part of a roster of some sort and just like being in storyline or wrestling actually in an actual match because he hasn't actually had an official match yet too. So he is some.
I lost both of you guys.
Yes.
No. Oh, there we go. Now I hear Nicole again.
Maybe.
I lost you guys for a second.
That's its way of saying it's time to go.
Felicia, you still there? Oh no. Let me see.
I don't think.
I'm trying to see if they sent a message or not. She's hanging up her thing and starting again, I think. But yeah, Nicole, you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah. Any thoughts about future? Before I think she's gonna wrap it up, but any thoughts so we don't just have dead air?
I mean, no. I really haven't been watching wrestling, so.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on future talent? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah, can you hear me? That's what I said. I think we lost Nicole now too.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear you.
Oh, yeah, can you... Yeah, so what were you saying? Any thoughts on... Yeah, I was asking any thoughts on future? I can't hear you if you're talking. I can hear you once in a while. I think it's...
See, and I can hear you.
Yeah, I think it's the the Discord buffering and the bandwidth. All right, well, I don't know if we should.
That's wrapping it up.
Yeah, do you want to plug yourself, because I can kind of hear you? So you want to plug what you're doing and what you're up to? No, I can't hear you. Damn it. All right, well, as for Nicole, you can find her on her YouTube channel at Rhapsody's Vlog, also on Twitter and Instagram at Rhapsody0607. So make sure you check her out there. She does a lot of hair care products and stuff like that. But make sure you check out her YouTube for reviews and news and such like that. As for Delisha, you can go ahead and find her on Twitter and Instagram at Delisha_Renee. I'm sure she will be back for this season 2 premiere. So season 2, episode 2 will probably be back. They're going to discuss a thing and maybe look for in summer for the second episode of After Talk. As for me, I am the voice of the voiceless, Cal. You could find me over here on the Kingslayer Network. The next time you'll see me is hopefully tomorrow running some Final Fantasy. If I get it in time, I know everything is being delayed due to COVID. But if not, I will be back on Monday, hopefully, if I get it by then. As for wrestling, the next time you will see us is AfterMat Awards, either on the 20th or 27th of April, so stay tuned. Until then, guys, this has been the Glamazon Delisha, Tricky Nikki, and myself. With some After Talk. We'll see you guys next time.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun.